Welcome to Lie of the Land, where I find musicians, writers and artists, and we take a wander through the Shetland landscapes that have inspired their work. We go to Yell tonight with poet Christie Williamson. His latest book of poetry, Doors to Nae, came out last year, and he's won acclaim for his translations into dialect too. Christie bide sooth, so I caught him during the summer holidays, and we headed north. Hello, Christie.
Hi, Jen.
Tell us where we are.
So, we are at Wastsanwick, Wastsanwick, I should say, really. And we're right afore the kirk and the adjacent manse. That was the first place that I ever cad home. And I bide here until I was 6.
Should we go and have a look?
Yeah, let's have a look, yeah. So the kirk is nae langer the kirk, and I suppose by elimination, therefore the manse is nae langer the manse. But they're still here and still standing, and yeah, this was home, and we're just we can just see round the back Andrew, and I mind like one of my very earliest memories was we had hens, and we had a cockerel, and I was out feeding the hens. I think I would have been about 4 years old, and the Roosty was the cockerel. He came very turn with me. And
cockerel's a big thing when you're 4 years old.
Yeah, Ken. Yeah, no. I mean, I would have had my money on him if we got into a fight. So yeah, I got quite a gluff, and then I ran into the house, and Mum took care of me, and that's so yeah. So this is a place of being taken care of. Maybe we can have a pretty wander. I don't know what if we can get. There's like a pretty bit kind of rocky beach down the front, Andrew. Mm-hmm. It looks like we're kind of the tide is maybe kind of bitten was tight. We can get down here. Now this muckle hill up here, there's a great sliding spot.
How would you describe Wastsanwick to folk who've never been here?
Oh, well, I mean it's very, very involved with the sea. Kind of tucked away. You're no far from that muckle rod that folk ging bombing up on the way to other places.
The fools.
Well, we see if we can win down here.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very much in the lee of that, and it's in the lee for I think probably the worst of the weather. Yeah, very, very sheltered. This bit of Wastsanwick anyway. Spot. Further up the hill, then it's a different story. There's the beach where my niece is going. Great muckle stretch of sand, and it was kind of tight knit, I think. I mean, it was. I suppose the places I bide when I was period, and Dad was the minister, so we kind of had this position of privilege, and the family was kind of a focal point in the community, which brought advantages that didn't likely do in the head when they bide in Sannock.
I was just here very briefly. We're actually looking at the house that I was in by the Spit.
Yeah.
When we left Fair Isle and came here.
Yeah.
A few months, I think.
But yeah, that privilege brought kind of pressures as well, of course.
Just describe the view for here.
Well, yeah. So I mean, so there's a kind of tangy bit of shallow water, and then this it looks like it's been a boat at some point, and it's now a keel.
Just the very last kind of rotten ribs of it.
Yeah, and the bolts, and it seems to be kind of pointing out to the other side of the bay.
I'm thinking sitting here about the video, the beautiful video of the Tempest.
Yeah.
Was it here actually? Because it was kind of, you could see Wastsanwick, and then there was a lot of tang and.
Yeah, that was an amazing piece of work. Yeah.
Who was it who was reading that?
Cilla Robertson. Yeah, I have a great admiration for that section. And I love The Tempest, and I maybe have misread it at times. But yeah, I definitely identify with Prospero and his books.
I never thought of hearing Shakespeare in dialect, and it's amazing. It works really well.
It's it's a very and I think one of the things that I really admire about that is it's when you're translating. I've translated some things into Shetland. Sometimes the mere linguistic difference, maybe not. Well, there's kind of a sweet spot, I suppose. I think I find the Romance languages, I can mark a poem that was originally written in a Romance language into a good Shetland poem that stands. I mean, like a translation never totally stands on its own, but to work for English and a fairly old English, that's a very impressive feat to pull off, and especially a practitioner, William Shakespeare's unique talent.
Dunna be fared, the sileless lipper nor we sons, sings and lightsome tunes that plays wis, and hurt naebody. No and then 1,000 plinking instruments will noodle about me lugs, no and again voices. So like if I was the walking for a lang sleep, I would nie bower again, and then in dreaming, the clouds I doot would part, and I would see riches about to fall o'er me. So when I wakened, I would cry out to dream eens meer.
It's all very, very still today, so we're not even getting much kind of soon for the water.
Yeah, I can.
The sun's even out.
I can. It wasn't out in Lerwick this morning.
No, I was in the west side of Steekit. There's a slit.
Oh yeah, loads of slits, yeah. Quite interesting. We had a skimming competition. But it's quite easy to learn to skip stones in Sonnet because there is loads of slits kicking about. If you have to do with actual stones, then you have to be more selective. Your technique needs to improve as well.
Are you a pretty good stone skimmer then?
Yeah, well, I don't. I think where John still has the age, but so he's going to read this poem that I was kind of thinking about on the way up because it mentions Yalsund in it, and we're in Wastiel, I suppose. Technically, this was like a poem I wrote for a commission it was called Reel to Rattlin' Reel. It was like a project commissioned poets and also invited submissions for poets remembering like experiences of the moving image. This was a film that I get to see in the Wastiel Hall. I think it was either home for a summer for school or home for a summer for uni. And Annette Gare gave me a lift, and we saw Carla's Song, which is a Ken Loach film about a bus driver in Glasgow who meets a Nicaraguan, refugee. And this was before I get to Nicaragua, where I ended up going years later. So this is it. It's called Ken Wastiel. Sound, tick, yell to the wastard, tides running like the workings o' a clock that measures mair time as e pair o' lungs could respire. Hooslichts tick up for the pilgrims to parade, open palms touching the cash box square, then flicked off for the feature to roll. Print, tick, programme decided by fair votes, practicalities, the package taken pride of place, the stented Friday morning overland. Sang, tick, Carla's, ringing bitter-sweet in hungry lugs afore the rods dispersed was to the simmer dim, Nisik's dancing to the music of solidarity.
It's a very affecting film, that. I mind seeing it when I was younger and being really blown away by it.
Yeah, I can. It made a right impact. And something about watching it in the Wastell Hall made it land a bit differently. But then when you experience a film or a piece of writing or a piece of poetry, then you bring everything that brings you to that place with you, to your experience of whatever the art might be.
I think I saw, it looked like a kind of half frog, half tadpole, but obviously it's not because it's the sea.
Oh, wow.
But something like a black shape
Wow.
with legs.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Wow. There's loads of these flies here, or
Yeah.
whatever they are. They're
Tang.
putting something anyway.
I love that feeling of like stones underneath your feet, but they're covered in old tang, and it feels like there's no other feeling like that underneath your feet. I mind that so well for childhood.
Yeah. I'm trying to find one of these that I don't think I'll get one that'll pop, but they used
No,
to if it
yeah.
was if it'd been really sunny for days and it was really dry. Then
Oh, it was so much fun.
Yeah. They're our wheat, I do.
Amazing stuff though, isn't it?
Yeah. It's quite fascinating that this life just comes out of the sea, and then it kind of goes into the sea pink seer and then up into the Surux. And
Yeah, we're just at the middle of August,
yeah.
which it won't be when this goes out.
No.
So we're at that kind of time where everything's getting a pretty bit by,
Yeah.
and the Surex are getting that rusty kind of red colour.
That's right.
It all feels a bit kind of blousy, is that the word? It's all kind of seeding everywhere.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's a kind of coming up for a kind of hairsty time.
Personally, I'm ready for winter. I'm very excited about winter.
There's a winter fan, yeah.
Okay, I love whatever season I'm in. But
I know that's it.
I do get very excited about winter, and I'm going to miss the Shetland winter this year because I'm going to be in Moscow, which will be a pretty bit colder.
It'll be colder. Yeah. Has you ever had a Muscovite winter?
I have now.
No.
It'll be new.
Yeah.
So when you were here, you were just pretty boy.
Yeah.
What were you like as a pretty boy? Were you curious? Were you outside a lot? Would you come down here a lot?
Yeah, well, we'd come here with Edderines, my brothers and my sister, and then we would go to the beach and we'd go about and we'd pick tatties when it was time to pick tatties and turn hay when it was time to turn hay, things like that.
The swing of the seasons of things and all that seasonality. I missed that.
I can, and I think that folk it's hard to be as close to it as folk were. Even the, I mean, I'm trying to persuade myself here, but even the short time I was a pretty boy.
I think a lot has changed.
Yeah.
You see that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I'm just wondering what this is, and I have this nifty app that tells you what plants are, because I haven't seen this before. It's got a kind of purple tinge to the leaves, strange kind of seed head.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Funny things grow by the shore.
Yeah.
I find it's a magic thing, this. Triangle Orach saltbush, also known as spear-leaved Orach, is that how you say it? Creeping saltbush.
Wow.
Or fat hen, I have heard of that.
Cool.
And then sometimes it tells you what you can do with it, if you can eat it and that. And it tells you if there's a poem about it, which there is. Out for the grinning skulls bleach whitely, under the salt bush sparkling brightly, out for the wild dogs chorus nightly, that's where dead men lie.
Wow. Well,
I suppose there might be some skulls bleached whitely in this beach.
I doubt there would be. No human beings, though.
No.
I was lucky enough to hit the bairns off this run home. My cousin Peter was into these sea caves out at Wise, and there's just this line of like boughs that have been washed in.
Really?
Yeah. And by the tide, and then they bide lodged in the top of these caves.
I mind the sea caves in Ferrell were I was Pirries, but obviously things seem big, but they're like cathedral size.
Yeah.
Just this echoing vast thing, and you in this Pirrie boat. And then the noise of the water is like echo and echo.
Yeah, no, it sounds like there's something grumbling away at the back.
Yeah. Maybe there is.
Maybe there is.
Oh, there's just some dog's lugs left. That's not quite gone. What do you call that?
Oh,
I don't think dog's lugs is the normal term for it.
no, I don't think so. No, what would I cat? In cottony thing.
Cotton grass, I think, is the English.
Cotton grass is the English. Yeah.
I like dog's lugs because it's very. I mean, that's what it feels like. The silky back bit of a dog's lug.
Yeah. And then they're these tight, pretty black heads, aren't they? Before it opens out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mind that. And I mind being very fascinated by how that dark tightness turned into this fluff, and they're so bright as well and clean.
When did you start writing poetry?
Wow, I wrote poems. I wrote poems at school. I wrote poems at probably like one of the earliest kind of poetic influences was Faye. Mum, actually, I think she was frustrated with my handwriting, which is still a frustration, but not so much to her, I don't think. But she doesn't totally have to deal with it that often. But she got me to copy out To a Moose, the Burns poem. That's a poem that never gets old, really. But I was in my 20s, really, I think, by the time I wrote anything that I guess you could say I took seriously. And I don't know, I mean, it was a trip north. I'd gotten myself marooned in Lerwick. I was biding in Scallow with Mum and Dad. This Moody Cavie came in and the buses were off and nothing was off. Like, I managed to get a lift off my cousin Steve. I just wrote this poem in a notebook about that experience. So this was like a pretty notebook that I had, and I kept like Fox phone numbers in the back of it and addresses and things like that. And then in the front, then I would write pretty notes, pretty poemy things. I was passed it to my brother for him to get somebody's phone number out. He found this poem and read it out, and he said, "That is a publishable standard." And
What was it about?
it was a bit. I'll read it to you. It was a bit. Yeah, I mean, it was a bit that big lump of weather that had come down for the north, and I sent it to the New Shetlander, and he took it, and it was a right buzz. It was a right buzz.
What age were you then?
I think it was 2003, so I would have been like 27, 26 maybe. Very short. Bully. I hear the comes for the north. I wiss to whiz another earth. But wiss or no, thy needles cut athin my being. And yet, my being thanks thee for the hardness that du gies me. Rider is the hardness at other earths could give you.
Standing in this glorious sunshine, but I'm thinking about the north wind. And was that, again, when you were starting out, was writing about nature and weather and Shetland, was that a big part of it?
Yeah, I guess. I think it was a big thing, actually. Yeah, in a way, I suppose. Like for me, I think like poetry is a way of processing why you are, why I am. And well, also I get terribly indecisive about that kind of thing. So it's a way of like working through different permutations of that. But I kinda like I kinda in this lifetime ever know comfy Al. Even if I haven't abided here for a while. And so that is massive part of why I am, and so that comes out in me writing that I mac to try and make sense of the world and me and my place in it and things like that. This other poem, this is actually just on the page. I wrote this poem actually about, it was a summer I was in a fringe show. I had a very small part in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I was also doing like a full-time office job at the time. The two just didn't gang together. It was impossible. The thing that came into my head was it was a burn that I couldn't jump over. So that's why I wrote this poem. It's called The Burn. A dim summer it was that year, I thought I'd try and jump the burn, easy twice as wide as I could ever hop to clear. It baptised me in nae-warness and dragged me wi' its currents deep alang a bank I didna ken and couldna conquer. That's when I kent that I was lost and wouldna ken a bit o' sense until I saw the shingly beach and tasted sat.
Nae-warness is a good word.
Yeah, it's a good word. Yeah. Are we going up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, look, Minnie's buttons.
Yay! Lovely. Oh, gorgeous.
That colour. I don't know how you'd even describe that colour. It's like, purple doesn't really cover it, does it?
Ermine.
Ooh. Yeah, it has a kind of richness about it.
It does.
In English, I think it's scabious, which is a horrible
Oh,
word.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're just up for holidays and you've been running around, and how does it feel when you come back here?
Oh, it's brilliant. It really is. It's strange. Like, Jens was off the boat about 5 days ago, and we're on the morning's next boat, and it just feels like, it kind of feels like I've never ever been anywhere else. It's almost like my day-to-day life in Glasgow. Part of me is like, when I'm up here, I'm like, does that even really actually exist? It's that far removed.
There is no truth but yell.
There is no truth but yell. That's yeah.
The tide's quite high, but you can see that spit, the gravel spit that comes. We used to watch otters playing there.
Oh, yeah. I did that.
So you would want to take me to Mid-Yell, I think, as well.
I think we'll mark for Mid-Yell now. That's all right with you, and get a sense of the other side of Yell, I suppose. I mean, it's not far away.
Can you just tell us when was it that you went to Mid-Yell?
So we flat in 1982 in August, I think. So I would have been sick, and I mind like trucks being packed up and going up the hill, and there was a newer manse.
And was that your dad to just go and do the job there?
When Dad was here in Sannock, then he was a lay missionary, and then the minister for him resigned for the Church of Scotland over infant baptism, I think, if I mind right. Dad gid to uni and trained and got his ordination as the full minister. Not that he was full. That was Wes.
Well, let's retrace your steps then. We'll into Mid-Yell.
Cool, right.
Okay.
I think I'm going to get my Gansey.
There's a chill in the wind.
Yeah, I can. It's we're kind of off Mid-Yell Pier, outside the Lynx's shop, which is now doesn't look like it's the Lynx's shop anymore, which is a boot in the bus.
I'd be very fond of that shop.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I mind I think there was 4 shops when I was in Mid-Yell. So Lynx's here, and then along at Altony Yundru, they were another shop. Maybe we can wander along that way. We'll tack some sand on our feet. Yeah, so they were a post office along here, and they had a pretty shop, and you could go and buy bars of chocolate and bags of crisps and bottles of juice and things like that. Harry Nisbet had a shop up at the top and even further out. But I don't know what he would gain for anything in the jail, mate.
An unexpected visitor as well in the swan.
I had no idea that we'd find the swan here.
She gets everywhere.
Doesn't she? That reminds me of this poem that I'm going to fin.
I'm just watching the bonksies as you fin your poem. They seem to be circling something. I'm still slightly scarred from the other evening. I went for a lovely evening's walk, Christie.
Yeah.
Down to the sea.
Yeah.
And the sunset was glimmering on the water. Beautiful. And then I heard this goose. Goose terror was echoing through Vaux. And it was a bonksy killing a goose on the water.
For God's sake.
But it just took so long and there was so much goose screaming and I just had to laugh at the universe. You know, here was I trying to be serene and it's like, no.
Yeah.
Horror.
Well, that, I suppose, in the yin and the yang, then that's that was a kind of, they was looking for a different kind of yin. I did, but they was presented with, kind of that serene for sure. We were admiring the bonksies. Actually, we argued to Musa yesterday. The bonksies, especially when they're kind of banking about, I kind of instinctively duke.
It's very sensible.
Yeah, I can. But they were flying very hard. They didn't come that close to us.
I'm afraid I indulged in the very old sport of tacking somebody for sooth and tacking them up to the hill. And seeing how they deal with the bonksies. It was really funny.
I'll bet.
He actually did okay. But he did ask if I was trying to get him killed. There's a kind of primal fear at Tax Orenfolk when they're being attacked by a bird with a 7-foot wingspan.
It's a very, very terrifying thing to encounter. Yeah, I mean, that time actually we come up with Sandy, then we had like a pretty bit of time to kill in Gutcher before we got on the Blue Mill Sound. So I took Oliver, so he was 5 at the time. And we got into the beach at Gutcher and it was, the Turks were still here for the summer. And they come and they pecked our heads before we had the sense to clear the beach.
Turks are worse.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, no, well, yeah, bonksies are probably a scarier prospect, but they're much more likely to no quite catch you.
They're just playing.
Yeah.
It's a fine pretty beach, this. And I love this when you get the tide line and there's the tiny bleached crabs just in a line.
Oh yeah, no, they're beautiful, aren't they? Barely, maybe no even a finger's width across.
Yeah, so what does this place mean for you?
Well, this is a much more conscious kind of home in that, like, I'm here. We moved here when I was 6. And I get to the hostel in 3rd year, but and Mum and Dad bide here until 99. So I was at uni at that time, and they flipped. They had to, because Dad was retiring. It's a curious thing when you're flipped, when you're kind of flowing the nest, but then they do the same thing, and you're like, well, I didn't mean forever.
Where's my bedroom?
Kane, yeah. What's going to happen?
How far did they go?
Scalawa. Like, Faydown, then it's probably been rarer that I get up to Yale, so it's really fine to win back hour. Because a lot of the time when I come up, then I'm seeing Mum and Dad. It's really fine. I was very interested actually in the satiness of the air. There's a lot stronger out here than it was in Sarnic. I don't know how to account for that. I guess it's maybe like knowing quite so deep a lee, a bit more exposed to the water. I'll read you this poem. So the manse, Shaddy the manse, it's just up yonder with the green roof yonder. And so we had a brilliant view, and you could sit and watch the sea breaking over the cliffs in Fetlar. It was immense. It was really immense. Comings and goings in the harbour were a big part of life. Something that I was able to keep an eye on. So
binoculars at the window.
Yeah, oh yeah. A few pairs, yeah, for different purposes. So nothing untoward, the kinds.
Seeing who was coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I saw this boat sailing in the bow, and this is so I didn't write this poem then, but this I wrote this poem minding it. It's called Spotted. An for the book, cut short off a Broch Lodge, Shawan in under canvas, with favourable force forward, helping her fin the richt side of the Heide o' Heftigert. A white cross laying on a blood red bed. I'd seen the flag on the page afore, kent where it was fae, but never tout I'd see it flap its wide down mid-yell voe. An adventure I wasna looking for, through the Russian spyglasses.
We had Russian ones as well.
Zenits. But yeah, they were Russian, all right, that's for sure. But I love the word spyglasses, and of course, segues quite neatly with Russian.
We wander and keep walking.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. What I had in mind was that we would ging along front yonder. I think the tide is maybe kind of bitten with tape, but we'll see what we can find anyway.
I love the idea of being able to see Fetlar and waves bracking on Fetlar. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it was and that was definitely a winter perk.
You can kind of clamber along the shore.
Yeah, we can.
This is great fun. This is what I'd be doing if I was on my own, jumping on the big rocks. Woo.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, a canal. So the Mid-Yell Canal, here we are. And what must be one of the boniest kirkyards.
Yeah, it is a bony kirk. Yeah, no, I mean that is a. See a Williamson out yonder. I think see
Robert.
The Mucklestein yonder. I mean, like I might be wrong, but I think it's Norwegians.
For the war.
Yeah. We would have like on the 17th of May, then we would have a memorial remembrance up there. And then we used to have like sometimes in the Kirkcalder there would be like a buffet and things, because I think the crabs there's quite a bit of connection to Norway and Iceland, I believe. Yeah. So the dialect thing he was asking me about. So like when I was.
Shall we sit and get a bit of
Yeah, sure.
It's pretty bit windy.
Yeah, so when I started writing poems, I was biding away. I was in Glasgow. I wanna whatever. Lost this internal dialogue that sometimes externalises, but is primarily in Shetland. And so poetry was a kind of escape for that. It was kind of like a way of expressing it and getting it out there. And of course, like I'm lucky enough to be able to speak to my brother and mum and dad on the phone and whatever, and different things like Dee. in Shetland. So, but there are times when you canna, and so that is like one of the reasons that I write poems as well. I started writing poems in the first place. And then another reason I prefer to write in Shetland is, I mean, I don't know how objective it's possible to be about it, but I think that it sounds a lot better.
I quite agree.
Well, and so much of poetry is a bit sound.
I mean, English in comparison is terrible, like, flat.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't have the sharp sounds and the...
Yeah, I mean, it is like, I mean, any language can be beautiful. I mind speaking to a Danish poet, and he's like, "This is the problem with Danish, it's just ugly." And I'm like, "No, it's not ugly, it's this beautiful language." Of course, I'm invested in that because it's quite close to Shetland linguistically, and phonetically, and like sonically as well. So I had to disabuse him of the notion, but yeah, and English is really. I suppose it's no accident that it's the dominant language. I think a lot of that is to do with like socioeconomics, but it can be very precise and it is widely understood.
But is it a different experience for you to write in English?
Yeah, it is. I think my English poems are probably a bit more cerebral.
Like abstract?
They can be, yeah. They can be. That side. Oh yeah, here's actually. Yeah, no, I could read to you. This is New Writing Scotland. Got 3 poems in New Writing Scotland. Can't believe it. And 2 of them are in Shetland. One of them is in English.
Okay.
I'll read you the English one for the get a bit of balance. It's called Return for Jerry. In Victoria Park, they've taken the tennis nets away, but the boy still plays his backhand pass, making the dada's outstretched strings ping at the far reaches of the white-lined tarmac, teaching each one and all the thing to keep your eye on is the bounce of the ball, the height of your chances, and with the rain dry on your soles, whatever falls rises again to call the dance. Don't want shit.
Yeah, I'm just... because that one looks... yeah, I wanted to ask you spelling and stuff, so maybe, yeah. Speak about that one.
Yeah, okay. So this is Dominion. I am Charles Novoselsky. Liberated bodies breathing free, aye shaw themselves for what they are, and at the hills fit, trow smir and hungry jazz, they were aints a wee, wad traded chains for reins, was stage eclipsed page after page for the golden ages o' growing trow joy and pain. With the sun softly touching doon a hint the far side o' the loch, a licht persists in dancing round the croon o' the bairn was open hand, holds like a broken blackbird's wings. Ah, the magic of the land.
Spelling of Shetland words and when things are yell and when things aren't, and what's your what's your view on all that?
I suppose, like I said earlier, like the reason I write poems is to get something out that's inside. The reason that you write them down is so that someone other can like share that experience, can access what's going on. Obviously, if you're writing in English, then it's a word processor will just tell you how to spell things. And if you're writing in Shetland, then that's no facility that we have. And so what we do here is we have conventions. So we have like Johnny Graham's Shetland Dictionary, and that's like an amazing achievement it is, and it's a brilliant baseline. But if you're not fit Tingle, then there will be words in it that are spelt away. You didn't say them, and I think that if I'm writing in Shetland to be true, faithful to that thing inside me, then it has to look like it sounds like what's happening in my head. And if I'm reading somebody else's poem, then I want it to look like what it sounds like in their head. So I think that it's important to be aware of the conventions that exist. But I mean, like on a purely philosophical level, I'm very much again, I'm anybody binding anybody to anything. And if you take that to the extreme, then it's like anything goes. In a way, yeah, anything does go. But there's like a sweet spot, I suppose. Like your tap bit would maybe be a bit loose, and
I kind of wonder how that's been like in your career as a poet, when a lot of your work is written in Shetland, and obviously the audience for that is going to be period.
Yes. No, I mean it is. But I think like readers were conversant with Scots didn't seem to have much bother enjoying them whether they... That's
true, and then actually a lot of folk are conversant with Scots that wouldn't actually say that they were, but of course they are.
That's very true. No, that's a massive thing. I find that if you're writing poetry, like, and especially if you're writing like a kind of poetry that's trying to do things, then there's already a narrow you're already in a narrow bit of water. And I tend to find it folk that are conversant with that. I don't know, Shetland speakers, they prefer the Shetlandines as well, which is maybe because as much as it narrows your audience, it narrows your competition as well. But it's I guess it's maybe closer to the essence of me, maybe, and that kind of comes across.
You write about a lot of things. It's a very bland thing to say, but your poems cover a lot of different things, and some of them are quite political, and some of them are. There's a lot of kind of longing. There was one I was scrolling through my notes on my phone, which is a giant mishmash of nonsense and thoughts and pretty scraps of poetry of other folks' poetry that I found, and I looked, and there was a pretty bit by you, and it was, I think, keep the fires burning, be the good, do needs thy child to see.
Yeah.
And I loved that because it wasn't the good that thy child needs to see, it was that do needs thy child to see.
Bairn, I think. I kind that poem, that thanks for quoting that, yeah. A pal of mine, Sammy, had his first bairn, and I wrote that poem, and I'd certainly had Oliver by that point, so I had like kind of access to that when you suddenly are responsible for another human being's life, then your perspective is changed. You want that way. I have responsibility for our lives. I do.
How do you think that your politics, your outlook on the world, has been shaped by where you come from?
Well, I have this kind of relationship with Christianity, and I think that there's aspects of it that I find hard to cleave to, but then there's like kernel, the essence of it is do unto others as you would have others do unto you, really, I would say, and that is a pretty exacting standard. It's no, and if I make an analysis of political or economic or social behaviour, then at the baseline of that analysis is going to be, are you managing to do that, or are you managing to do that? I mean, like I'm not saying that I manage to do that like 100% of the time myself. I suspect even the saints have fallen to temptation. So that is like a sense of injustice that I grew up with, and when justice isn't served, then like the universe is imbalanced. I mean, that's my maybe more, I don't know, like maybe more consequent to my upbringing than the place of that upbringing. But I don't know that it's totally detached for the place of that upbringing, because there is like I think when you're in like Midgell is a massive place compared to Westonic, but there is like an equilibrium or like fairly very resilient, but a community with integral fragilities consequent to its scale.
You were speaking about when you were in West Sandwick and working with the tatties and sheep and whatever was needing done, the hay.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I find that to have been a very, very central, fundamental part of my growing up and who I think I am and we are, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it's also a thing that's very hard to explain to folk Sooth.
Yeah.
Do you find that?
Yeah, I do find that, yeah. I do. And there is that. Being alive is a communal effort. I believe that is true everywhere. But it's not everybody that pushes their way to it. But I think that sense or that, I don't know kind of if I've ever been able to quite put it into as few words, isn't it totally non-existent in like a place like Glasgow or Edinburgh? But it's perfectly possible for folk to live their whole lives without having any sick notion.
The trend is against it, but it does exist. Forces are against that, and you have to push hard to still take that attitude and live that kind of life in places like that, I think.
That's so true. That is so true, yeah.
Whereas here, I think, or maybe this has changed in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Changed in a lot of places. Here, the structure of things was angled towards communal effort.
Yeah. And it was angled that way by necessity. I think that, like, globally, and I think it is a global thing, then it's the angling away for that is not necessary. It's just evil. It's greed.
And we see plenty of that here as well.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's it. I'm aware, I kind that's it's easy to kind of fall into like a hagiography, but like a mythic kind of parable land where not only didn't it exist in your lifetime, it never did, because it'd been like where there's folk, there's going to be like friction and there's
and there's actually far enough romanticisation of Shetland done by the rest of the world before we start doing it as well.
That's true.
The mythic lonely islands.
Yeah.
Where I shall go and find myself. Yeah. So we wander on, I think. One of the things that I found when I come back a year ago was that a lot of all that kind of curious childlike joy and imagination that you need to hold on to in your life. It's very easy to lose it, and I'd lost it, and it was coming home and sitting on big hills and looking at pretty flowers and just being in all this that let me be in that again.
Yeah.
And it was so necessary for my own kind of survival.
But you have, I think there's I mean, I find that when I come north as well, and I think that one thing that, I mean, I guess this is, I suppose, particular to My situation in Twa, Piri Bairns in a tiny Piri house in a big city is the thing that I hae here when I'm here that I don't hae in Glasgow is space. And even I mind actually the first time, like, I didn't drive until much later in life. First time I came home in the car, got off the boat, when the M80 picks up the M8, all of a sudden I was like, what the hell is going on here? And I didn't suffer an incident, but it was all of a sudden very stressful. Dad's parish when we were here was officially called Fetchler linked with Yell.
Church of Scotland.
Yeah. That was. I mean, it was more than Dad could do it himself. Like every other week he would ging to Fetchler, and I think he would do like Culvo on the way back. Then every other week it would be mid Yell in the morning, then Burravo, and then there was a kirk in Seliford as well. And then I think last Yell. So yeah, so he
a lot of souls to tend to.
I can. It meant as well that we got like other ministers would come up and pick up the services that he couldn't attack. So I kind of lived with this through traffic.
Ministers.
Yeah. Well, would ask me what I thought about things in the world and the heavens and what have you, which I just took. I didn't think you know any better, but definitely had an impact on the way I saw the world and I think conducted myself.
You feel any pressure to follow in his footsteps?
Well, I mean, it was never pat on me, no. But it is a kind of a thing. Like, what are you going to grow into? Whether or not there's pressure put on you, there is a pressure that's kind of created.
Well, so, we're at the kirk that isn't the kirk anymore.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end of our traversing about Yell.
Yeah. So, I'll read you a couple more poems.
Yeah.
So, this is the first book,
Okay.
Owen Faders. That came out in 2015. So the first poem, this was like a suggestion of Robert Allen's. The first poem in him is an English language one. But it's probably one of the less kind of cerebral English language ones. It's called Ark, and that's with a C, okay. I juggle boats for my eldest son. He throws them from his bath. I catch them, use their gunnels as meridia, send them sailing through the air. Sometimes they stay up there as long as it takes for the present to slip into the past before one goes too far. All three sink to the floor. Oliver laughs. I remember when someone else was the clown, wishing he was the child again. I'll read the last poem for the new book. This is the new book. This is Doors to Nayway. This is like, so there was like a couple of years ago, it was W.S. Graham's centenary year. And I sent this in for like an anthology. Didn't get in, but it was a response to poem of Sandy Hutchison's, and Sandy was a poet for Bucky. I met him in Glasgow. I couldn't quite speak Shetland to him, but I could speak something that was a lot closer to it, more urban West Coast demotic. He was an amazing guy. He was a really, really, really brilliant guy. And he wrote this long poem to W.S. Graham. And this is a kind of a response to that. That's called Gone Midnight. While sat the waves, the ains that crash white with the gluff of rocks puncturing the lumber of the flot between low water and high, with their socket, serrated imperviability. The ains at tongue saft into shingle and pebbles, into samphire marshes, prickling green of the full moon. While slip and nip or something sharp to the tides, put hairs under kissed and give them something to showy. While snib the padlocks and og back in to let creamy heed after creamy heed settle until the saft gaping belly of the deep. Show me a man that can feel the spray of millennia socking for his tays to his croon without fan to brook every landing or twa, and I'll shady a net that dips in and out, that fills and spills and howls along the bottom of what lies beneath the very keel we feel we maun aye bide upon. The Clyde swees sair at Capello as another cup run grinds to a halt. Even now, when a' the pages is turned and the inks run dry as dust, should you slip the lid off the wall and drop thy can as far as to mine, he'll yield yet for deep i' the heart of things that still cold truth.
Look that you've been carrying your books around in a plastic bag with a Shetland flag on it. Well, Christie, thank you very much for taking me around a bit.
Oh no, my pleasure. Absolutely delighted. Thanks for indulging my wanderings and wanderings. Fine to be back in Yell.
Here the swan goes.
Yes, he goes. Engines on. I wonder what she's after.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Lie of the Land. And thanks to Christie Williamson for being so generous with his holiday time and giving us a glimpse of his childhood and his poetry. Good night.